Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. I think this will be my sixth video made for Jason. I made 5 previously to talk about naming TV shows and episodes and all that, trying to get him on track of following Plex's wonderful support articles. Well, he has a post in Plexaholics today. Is there any way to pull 3 instead of the name? So reading between the lines, he wants to use the alias instead of the listing at TVDB. And then he's got another graphic posted, but I don't know where this is from, nor do I have any faith that it has anything to do with Plex. So I told him I'd make a video when I got home today, and he chimed back in with some clarification. Mainly I want to know if I can label it this way, the aliases, Adventures of the Wilderness Family 3, without screwing it up. And the answer is, yeah, I think so, but the TV database has nothing to do with a Plex movie library. So let's start at the basics, seeing this is my first video for Jason on movie libraries. There's 3 support articles. The main one, naming and organizing your movie files. There's this next one, which is multi-version movies. And then there's the final one, which is a Plex Pass feature, multiple edition movies. So let's start with a main naming guide. We scroll down just a little bit. Plex tells us how to separate libraries into their own subfolders. One media folder or shared media folder, and then a folder for movies, folder for music, folder for TV shows. I like a more nested structure that has a sort folder for multiple movie libraries, and the next level down might be movies-main, movies-kids, movies-documentary, and so on. Same thing for a TV show library. You have a sort folder for TV shows, and inside that put subfolders for TV shows main, TV shows kids, TV shows anime, and maybe TV shows DVR if you're using Plex's DVR function to keep content with commercials in it separate from your regular ripped collection. But this is the basics. I like a more nested, detailed structure. But that's neither here nor there. So then we drop down and Plex gives us some examples. So it's the proper movie name and the year, always in parentheses. And the movie's named the same way as the folder is. And then it shows a basic example of how to name Batman Begins for the folder, the movie file, and an English subtitle, and even a poster if you're changing advanced settings to use local metadata. You wouldn't do that by default. The next section is the most important. It tells you that you basically name movies from either IMDb or the movie database. And I'm here to say that without Plex ever stating it, I know the movie database is weighted higher than IMDb, which is why I always recommend naming from the movie database and not IMDb, unless it's a very rare case where a movie's only listed at IMDb and not the movie database. That's hardly ever going to happen to anybody. So Plex gives some examples. I'm going to use this one first because I recommend TMDB. Inside curly braces, it's TMDB dash the database number. If you insist on using IMDb, it's in curly braces, IMDB dash the database number, including the TT number. And I'll show you how to get those in a second. But the television database is not a source ID for a Plex movie library. And no matter how you name it to TVDB, it's never going to have anything to do with Plex scanning it in because it has to be named from either of these 2 databases. All right, so let's jump into Jason's one of those 3 movies first before we explain the other 2 support articles. So TMDB also lists official collections, and there's a setting in a Plex movie library to pick collections up and create them based on what's listed at TMDB. There's no such feature at IMDb. So that's another plus for TMDB. So if we click into this movie, it's a simple copy and paste. That can be your new movie name and your folder. if there happens to be a colon someplace, like The Adventures of colon space the Wilderness Family, just remove the colon. It's an illegal character. Don't replace it with a dash. Just remove it. So it's very easy. If we jump back to this, and you want to use the TMDB source ID, well, from here, it's just this number here. And we're going to name all three of these movies from TMDB before the video completes, and I'll show you how to do it. Now, it's the same with IMDb. Let's back up here a little bit. Let me copy that. Let me back up to get back there. And I'm going to search for that movie at IMDb. So it's a little harder to copy and paste it, but you can. It might not come out, it's the same, but you can copy and paste that. But you have to put the year in parentheses, where you don't have to here. It's already in parentheses with a copy and paste. So that's one more plus to speedily move through manually prepping movies. Okay, so here's the TT number if you insist on using IMDb instead of TMDB. So you just copy that. When you're naming the movie, you insert it in the curly braces the proper way. So it would be curly brace open, IMDb dash, that TT number you'd paste in, curly brace closed. All right, so let's take a look. We have the movie here, and this is, if we back up, and I'm searching for Adventures of the Wilderness Family, we have the original one. We have the second one, which is named The Further Adventures of the Wilderness Family here. And the third one, Mountain Family Robinson. They don't match any of the names over at TMDB. And again, TVDB doesn't matter, so we shouldn't even look there. But the interesting thing is, if we look at the three names here, and then we go over to IMDb, the first movie's named correctly. Or let's say it's named as a match for TMDB. The second movie at IMDb is named The Further Adventures of the Wilderness Family. Over here it's just Adventures of the Wilderness Family 2. And the third movie is named for a match at TMDB. So we're going to name all three of these movies this way and see how Plex scans them in and see if there's any option to have the second sequel named The Further Adventures of the Wilderness Family. And if there's not, that's evidence, in my opinion, that even though Plex is pulling raw metadata from both TMDB and IMDb, that TMDB is weighted more than it is at weighted more than IMDb is. So let's just get into this. I'm going to click into this, copy that. Let's minimize this. I've got 3 dummy files set up. These are not real movies. Good evening, fellow Plexers. They're the same 15-second short segment of me speaking. So let me rename that. Now let's just keep going back and getting all 3 done. See how it's just an easy copy and paste? And let's go back and get the third one. And I can just literally copy and paste without an issue. Well, hey, let's do the third one from IMDb, seeing I'm not sure how that's going to copy. So I see, now this one, because it has the original title there, I can't just do a simple copy and paste. Now I have more work to do. So I have to get rid of that funny character. I have to get rid of the alias. And then I have to look back and what year is it? 1979. I have to put that in. Oh, I did that wrong. So just to use IMDb for a copy and paste, it's more work. I ended up with the same result, but it's more work than just going to TMDB and just copying this here. So now I can manually set these up with folders and add the TMDB ID number to them, but I'm just going to use FileBot. So let me open up FileBot in my own custom expression, and I have lots of tutorials on all this. Now let me get this over here. I'm going to highlight all three and just drag them into FileBot. Now FileBot has built-in expressions, but if you add your own, you don't see them anymore. So I'm going to use my own, and it's going to create structure. The fact that FileBot found these without asking me if I was sure that each movie was what means FileBot checks TMDB and it just knows. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a new folder for each one with a TMDB source ID in it and renaming each file to also include the source ID while putting media characteristics into brackets. I like to know what I have just by looking at the file name. So if I rename those, now we see the three folders, and if we go into the first one, we see the file name. Again, it's a dummy file name, has the TMDB ID number and media characteristics. So this space dash space is important. This is an official separator in Plex. Anything after is part of the versioning naming, not the edition naming, but the versioning naming. So let's go back to that for a second. That's the second article we talked about multi-version movies, and we'll see that space dash space here. Now they're giving some examples of versioning and edition tag in this example. And this is the only document you'll see by Plex where instead of using that space dash space that they use in the TV naming guide and they use in the main movie naming guide, they've got that here someplace with some examples. At least I thought they did. Yeah, right here for the part 2 and part 1, when you have two files that make up one movie. Let's see, what were we talking about? We were talking about the periods. So instead of using space dash space, you can use a period as an official separator. I like the space dash space. I don't like this for someone new because it makes them think they can use a period instead of a natural space in the movie name format or the folder formatting. No periods between words, no underscores. You may get a file like that, but remove them. It should be a natural space. Again, the period here replaces the separator of a space dash space. So we got the movies named. We know we don't use TVDB at all for a movie database. We know that we can name from either IMDb or TMDB, and I'm about to prove that TMDB is weighted higher, and you now know it's easier to copy and paste from. And
pretty favorable.
Oh,
and you know,
hold on, I hit the wrong button. Let me pause you for a second. All right, sorry for that interruption. So I think I was saying that my contention is the movie database is going to be weighted higher than IMDb, and I think we'll prove that. So what I have set up, I don't need my regular browser window open. I have a test movie library on this Ubuntu desktop computer. Plex is running in Docker, and I have that library pulled up in the Plex app. At least I think I do. And we are going to move these three dummy movies into that movie library. So this is what I was talking about. I have a media folder on this computer, and then I have a sort folder for movie libraries. Inside that sort folder, I have the actual Plex movie libraries. So this library that's up here is pointed at this folder, and inside that are properly formatted movies, and that's where I'm going to paste things in. So while Plex is scanning, let's go back. I have a movie sort folder for TV shows right here, TV-libraries, and then I have an actual example TV show library folder for anime, DVR, kids, and main. If you're just going to have a simple Plex server, you can follow Plex's examples. All right, so this scanned automatically, and we have three movies that were added: The Adventures of the Wilderness Family, The Further Adventures of the Wilderness Family, with a poster from the Wilderness Family. So this is showing IMDb weighting it a little bit higher. And then we have The Adventures of the Wilderness Family 3. So my guess was wrong. And then we have a collection that has all three in. And again, The Further Adventures of the Wilderness Family is coming through with a poster for the Wilderness Family 2. So in this case, IMDb was weighted higher than TMDB. And it might be a case where on an individual basis, Plex might weight that higher for just these series of movies, or just this movie in particular. Because there's no option to change anything from where metadata comes from under the advanced settings of this. I mean, I could change the poster, and there might be a poster for that original file name, like right here. I do have that option. Now, I could manually rename this movie, so let's try that. Well, I don't really need my original. No, I keep getting this mixed up. All right, let's do this. Let's get this on the other monitor. So let's just copy this part of it. And let's see if it survives a future metadata refresh. So I think it's locked in when you see the orange. I think counterintuitively, when you press that, it's no longer locked. So now we have that named correctly. And to go back to Jason's original concern, he wanted this to be named this way, which it was automatically. But it was a great example because the second one had an alias at IMDb that ended up mattering. All right, so let's see if it survives a scan of the library. It did. Let's see if it survives refreshing the metadata for the whole library. It did. Let's see if it survives a metadata refresh just for the movie. It did. Now, what it might not survive is changing all right, hold on. Where am I here? Let me go to the movie library globally. It might not survive this. If I edit the whole library and I go to advanced, if I muck around with this stuff, you should be using the default Plex movie scanner and agent. So if I change to the movie database, things might not survive that. So I don't want to do that because you should really be using, let's just cancel that and get back out. You should really be using the default options of Plex Movie for both the scanner and the agent. But a library update, you never know, it might pull the original name that's weighted from IMDb back. So it's an easy adjustment here. It should stay for just about forever, with the exception of maybe a big library update. Not you updating your library, but Plex updating the scanner. And as always, my videos are cold, so they may not flow as fast as some might like them to, but I try to get you from point A to point B with good information backed up by Plex's own support articles. I don't know if I've ever done a video that hasn't referenced the basics. I cover a lot of this in my different FileBot naming videos. I always reference the Plex support documents, and specifically to my friend Jason. With a TV movie, with a movie library in Plex, a Plex movie library, ignore any database besides TMDB and IMDb. And I showed you how TMDB is a little bit easier to work with when you're copying and pasting as you're naming manually. And don't forget, these great collections come from here, and that's the last thing I need to show. If you want to avail yourself of those automatic collections from TMDB, it's a global library setting. So you click the three dots. You can be any place as long as you see movies or whatever you've named your movie library. Click the three dots, manage library, edit. And any video I show where I create a library, I talk about this for a movie library. You go to the advanced, you drop down, and this minimum automatic collection size is set for disabled by default. You have options of 1, 2, 3, or 4. Option 1 will create the collection even if you only have one movie in your library out of that collection. I don't want to see single movie collections, so I have it set for 2, so the collection isn't created until at least the second movie from a collection is on. Now there's a James Bond collection, that's a big one. What else is a big one? The Fast and Furious, Star Wars, and Star Trek. Lots of movies in those collections. If you only want to see trilogies or larger, you could set this for 3. So you would see Back to the Future if you had all 3, but you wouldn't see the Back to the Future if you only had 1 or 2. If you really only want to see the huge collections, some people call them franchises. I don't know if I like that, but you could set it for 4. So something that had 3 movies, like Back to the Future, it wouldn't create the collection. But something like Star Wars would, or what's the other Harrison Ford movie, group of movies, Indiana Jones. You'd see that collection created because there's at least 4 movies in it. So I love this automatic TMDB option to create collections. It's really nice. Then there's one more option. There's different ways to display it. You can show collections with their items, or you can hide collections, but show their items or hide items which are in collections. And I'll explain that this way. So from the collection tab, these 3 movies that are in this collection are also listed in the library separately. So if we go back in and we change that setting, we go back in, we change that setting, advance, go down, hide collections but show their items. If I do that, we're going to lose something. Let's scan the library. Hold on, let's scan the library. You see the collection dropped out. I don't see it from the library tab. If I go to collections, it's still here. And the movies are here. If you have a lot of collections, you might not want to see them with the individual movies, or you might want to see them. The other option, let's go back to edit. Let's see the last option. Hide items which are in collections. Well, if I do that and I rescan the library, I lost the 3 movies, but I do see the collection. Some people like that, especially if movies are all named the same. Wilderness Family, Wilderness Family 2, well, we kind of fixed that in Wilderness Family 3. But that would not be cool for like the Fast and Furious, where one movie is named Too Fast and Furious. So in the regular library mode, all those Fast and Furious movies do not flow all together. So you might want to hide the individual items and just see the collection, or you might not, depending on your preference. But Plex lets you do it 3 different ways. Show everything, show just the collections, or show just the movies without the collection showing. But the collections always show up in the collection tab. So let me put this test library back to where it was. And we'll call this a video for Jason. Jason, always feel free to reach out if there's something that is tougher to decipher or you're having a problem with it. But I just want to point out, my friend, that TVDB has nothing to do with a Plex movie library, and the aliases here have nothing to do, but it happened to match. Well, actually, I don't know if it matched, and sometimes I can never learn to shut up. I don't know how this worked out at TVDB, if that was a similar issue for the third one. Yeah, so the alias here is what's listed at TMDB, but of course we found out that in this case IMDb was weighted higher, and then we manually changed it to kind of get what you wanted, one or regular 2 and 3, you know, for the sequels. Alright, so this is going squirrely, but I think you get the point, and we'll get this out to you, my friend, and happy Plexing.